All right, today we are jumping right into one of the most shocking visions in the Bible from the prophet Ezekiel. We're going to try to understand not just what he saw, but why it was such a big deal.
So God basically tells Ezekiel, I'm going to give you a personal tour, a tour of all the spiritual rot that's taken hold right in the heart of Jerusalem. And he warns him, every step is going to be more shocking than the last. Okay, let's get into it.
Our first stop on this, let's call it a tour of corruption, is right at the gate of the Lord's house. And what Ezekiel sees right away is just, well, it's a scene of totally misplaced grief. So verse 14 says he sees women weeping for Tammuz. They're right there at the entrance to the holy temple, performing this pagan ritual, mourning a false god. So you have to ask, right? Who in the world was Tammuz? Okay, so Tammuz was this Mesopotamian god tied to the seasons, death in the summer heat, rebirth in the spring. His worship was all about the cycle of nature, about death and decay. And this is a really important point because it sets up a huge contrast. It's a religion totally focused on what's temporary, what dies. And this right here really lays out the terrible trade-off they were making. Think about it. They were swapping out these incredible feasts that celebrated Yahweh, a god of life, of redemption, of hope, for these depressing rituals mourning a god of death. This wasn't just, a matter of taste. It was a flat-out rejection of their entire covenant with God. They were trading real hope for, well, empty superstitions. But as bad as that is, the tour isn't over. Not by a long shot. Just like God promised back in verse 15, he tells Ezekiel, you think that's bad? You're about to see something even worse. And now he takes him from the outer gate deep into the temple's inner court.
Okay, so now we're in the inner court. This is the most sacred space in the entire temple. And it's right here, among the people who should know better, the leaders of the faith, that Ezekiel sees the ultimate act of betrayal.
Verse 16 tells us he sees about 25 men. And that's not just a random number of guys hanging out. No, this number represents the priestly leadership. These are the guys who were supposed to be consecrated to serve God.
And where they're standing is so important. They are literally between the porch and the altar. This is the spot, the holy ground, where the priests were supposed to stand and intercede for the people.
And what are they doing in this incredibly sacred place? They've got their backs turned to the temple of the Lord, and they're facing east, worshiping the sun. I mean, wow. This is the peak of their rebellion. It's not just a mistake. It's a deliberate, physical, we reject you to God, choosing to worship a created thing instead of the Creator himself. You have to understand how huge this was. Turning their backs was this massive symbolic rejection. For generations, everything, worship, prayer, even how they set up their tents was all about facing towards God's temple. It was the center of everything. And these priests just turned around. Then in verse 17, God basically asks, do you think this is a small thing? He makes it crystal clear that this spiritual betrayal isn't just some private little sin. Oh, no. It has real-world, devastating consequences. It's the direct cause of the social breakdown and the violence that has completely filled the land. And then comes verse 18, and the judgment is final. It is a truly terrifying conclusion. God says, okay, you've turned your backs on me. The connection is cut. He straight up says he won't spare them, he won't have pity, and he will not listen to their prayers anymore, no matter how loudly they cry out. So after seeing all of this, these unbelievable acts of betrayal, you just have to ask the biggest question of all, right? Why? I mean, what could possibly drive an entire nation, especially its leaders, to do something like this? Well, turning to idols wasn't a simple thing. It wasn't just a one-time mistake. When you dig in, you find this whole set of really powerful and frankly timeless reasons that led them down this road. Let's walk through these steps. First, you've got the desire for something you can see. It's a lot easier to worship the sun, right? You can see it, you can feel it, it's tangible, unlike an unseen God. Then there's just good old-fashioned peer pressure. The nations around them were doing it, which is probably why the women got into that Tammuz cult. And let's be honest, some of these religions were attractive because they let you do whatever you wanted. They even made immorality part of the worship. Plus, you get this illusion of control. Like if you just do the right ritual, you can make the gods do what you want. It all boils down to a religion that's just easier. It doesn't ask nearly as much of you. And really, that's the heart of it, isn't it? The core temptation, both back then and right now, is that we want to create a God in our image. A God that serves us, that likes what we like,
that approves of our choices instead of the other way around. It's about surrendering to the God who actually is versus inventing one that suits us. And that's a question that's just as real for us today as it was for them.